insignificant, a whisper in the wind. Sometimes you think nobody knows your name, but there's somebody watching over you, and he knows everything you're going through.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is my interview with Jenna Summers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome to the World According to Dick Buttons, the Dick Buttons Interviews, a woman whose profile I came across on Facebook and was totally blown away when I started reading. And I said to myself, this is someone I have to have on. My listeners are going to love to hear her story. Please welcome to the show, Jenna Summers.
Hi, it's nice to be on here.
So I want to start at the beginning, okay? Before we get into all the highlights that I wanted to touch. Tell me about your upbringing as a child. Were you born and raised in Texas?
Yes, I was born and raised here in Texas in a very small town. It's the Piney Woods is what we call it. It's where I grew up. I grew up in a small town, and but I also grew up in abuse growing up. My father, a big man, and they called him Big John because he was a Gold Glove boxer, and at one time. But when I was a little girl, my book is called Mama Jennifer. It talks about my life story and where my dad, I begged him one time to go get this storybook that was in the store. And I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And I just kept begging him. And he finally bought it. And when we got home, he read it to me. I begged him to read it. And it talked about how Jesus died on the cross for my sins and how he rose again. And that big man, who is a man that didn't believe, planted a seed. And that seed grew. But as life turned out, I never knew that the man who planted the seed would also be the pain of my life. I was abused growing up, and he hid under covers. There was one time that he whipped me with a switch. You get spankings, but this wasn't a normal one. And he whipped me so hard, I was bleeding on the back of my legs, the back of my back, and of course, back then there wasn't anything to be done with children that were abused. So my mom said, go to school, tell them you fell off your bike, So I lied and told them that's what happened. But every night when I was under those covers, that pain, those whips, and there were other things in my life in which he did were very abusive. And he beat my mother a lot, and but mentally and physically. But God was always there for me in my life. And
yeah, I was going to ask you how, and this was at the age of 4. Was this when you were a little bit older?
Oh, as time went along, as I got older, the abuse began and became more and more as the years came by. Yeah. So
that's hard to deal with, even as a younger person. I mean, that just shows your intestinal fortitude to forge on and carry on, and says a lot about you as a person.
I'm a strong person, but I feel all my strength comes from God. In our lives when we're born, I felt from the very beginning God had a plan for me in my life. But my father was abusive. He was very violent. I mean, you sit at the table, if you drop something, he'd throw the whole table, I mean, that's the kind of violence he was. And
wow.
But anyway, later on, the book shares a lot more about what I endured growing up. And we was always afraid, that he was going to come home and probably just kill all of us, But God protected us. And when I was 12 years old, God always had, like I say, angels that were there for me in my life, that helped me along the way. And I was seeking God in my life. And my dad had a grocery store, and this elderly couple came in. The man was an older man with a cap and overalls on, and the woman was kind of, heavy set with a satin dress, I guess you'd call it. But they asked if I could go to church with them. And my father said yes. And I was so excited. But then that's when God was opening more doors for me. I would walk down the aisle at that church because I wanted so much to trust Christ, but I didn't know how.
Hmm.
And then I went to Billy Graham
Oh,
crusade. And I'm sure you know all about Billy Graham.
I
He
do. Yes.
was such a blessing to me in my life. But in the stands at that moment, he was making it so simple. God was using me of what I needed to do. And at that moment, I asked Jesus for forgiveness and asked him in my heart. And it changed my whole life. Because at that age, I started going to school. I take my Bible and tell people about God. And I started reading a lot about Africa. And
Hmm.
I told my teachers, yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a missionary. I'm going to Africa and I'm going to be around the world telling people about Jesus.
Wow, at that young
And,
age, you knew that's what you wanted to do. That's pretty
oh,
cool.
yeah, I already knew what God wanted for me. And they just laughed at me, oh, you'll never do that, right? But I met one of the teachers in one of the churches when I come back from furlough from Africa. She come hugging me and said, "You told us exactly what you were going to do." I think some of us do know, what our plan is. But God had a plan, and later in life, I married and also worked in Central America when I was 18.
Okay.
And at that time, I got married. And at Central America, I washed clothes in a hollow log, and drew water from the well. And
Hmm.
I played guitar and I sing and I shared Jesus with the little kids and working with them. And still, my heart was on Africa one day. And we came back to the States, my husband and I. I'm a very happy person, very optimistic, have a lot of love. And well, we came back. I had my first child at that time, my little girl. And in the house, there was like a gas leak. And I don't know, after a while, I started getting a bad headache, and I knew something wasn't right. So I grabbed my baby and I always say God gave me those feelings, when
Hmm.
something was wrong. So I grabbed her and I went out the back of the kitchen door. It exploded behind us. And it threw me and my baby to the ground. And we got up, and I held tight to her and got to somewhere to get help. But after that, my husband came and he didn't know if we were in the fire or not. And when he
Oh
saw
my
us,
God.
yeah, he just ran, just held on to us, right? And
Hmm.
so thankful. But God blessed us so much, in our lives too. And he gave us more than we had back than what we
Right.
lost in that fire. Material things aren't important.
They
It's
are not.
yeah, no, they're not important at all. It's the ones you love and your life. But then later, God blessed, and it was later, a while later, and we got another place to live in my husband's hometown, very
Okay.
small town. And I was pregnant again. I was starting to grow, I was pregnant, and I would be working outside in the yard, planting flowers and things. And the trash man, he was an African American man, and he would go by on the trash truck, and he was watching me, and I felt that feeling again. God gave it to me. Something's not right with this. And I'd share with my mother-in-law, my husband, and they just, oh no, everything's fine. Nobody's gonna harm you.
Oh my
But
God. I know where this is going, but oh my God. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, I just but one day I had a dream, and I was so afraid when I woke up, and I told my mother-in-law, I said, I feel like something this dream I had that I was going to be killed. And if something happens to me, I told her to take care of my little girl for me. She said, "Oh, no, nothing's going to happen to you, Jen." But anyway, the very next day, I had this carport sale for my sister-in-law, and she was selling things. And the garbage man and the other guy, they stopped, and I handed them 2 tracts. And the tracts, what I'm talking about, you know, how you hand out, you tell how to be saved and about Jesus,
Okay.
and that's what they're for. So I handed it to him. The next morning, I heard a noise. My husband went to work really, really early. I got up and I didn't see anything, but at that moment, he was hiding already in my house. And
Oh my God.
I went back to bed and I lay there. And then I felt, you know, this heavy weight over me. And he was suffocating me with his bandana. And you could smell his odor. He stunk, you know, really bad, you know. And then I saw the blade, the knife. And he started stabbing me multiple times. And he wouldn't stop. And I kept asking, why are you doing this? He just kept on. And then I fell to the side of the bed. And he was still stabbing me, you know,
Wow.
and then he dragged me by my hair, and then he slit my throat. He thought I was dead. He went out. And I laid there, and I could hear God, and I know it was him. "Get up, Jenna. I'm not through with you yet." And
Wow. Jenna,
I
thank you for sharing that. I could see it. It's still emotional with you, and why wouldn't it be? But I mean, to thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad you wrote a book about that because I'm going to put a link up for everybody to get the book. I wanted to go back to your dad and your mom. Was that ever resolved in any way?
Yes, my father and my mother. My dad later on became a Christian. He got
Okay.
saved. He trusts the Lord, you know. And but yeah, those things were resolved, and some of it resolved even when I was in Africa. You know, I had gone. Actually, when I went on one of my mission trips to Central America, I'm going to go backtrack a little. My father, he knows how much I love ketchup, right? And he filled up we took a little overhead camper and things with us. He gave me boxes of ketchup because he was so afraid I wouldn't have it. But anyway, later on, my father trusted the Lord.
That's
And
yeah, that's good.
yeah, and life just changed. And he even, one point when I came home from Africa, he told me, "Sissy, I'm sorry."
Oh, okay, good. That's where I wanted to go. I wanted to make sure that either he paid for what he did or he repented and he understood and he apologized. That at least that's
Yes.
buttoned up. Okay,
Yes.
so back to you getting stabbed. Who found you and how did you survive that?
Well, I was laying there, and I felt the Lord, you know, there with me. And I got up, and I started slipping in my blood, and I couldn't stand. I kept falling. There was so much blood there, and so I started crawling, and then I'd get up, and then I'd crawl, and I got all the way to the road. And neighbors were standing there watching me die. You know, they were froze. Do you understand what I mean? When people see something that's so horrific, they go in shock.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they were in shock. But then there was this African American woman, big lady, and her daughter knew me, was hollering my name to her. They had stopped the car, and the woman got out, and she took me and put me in the back of the car. And what's so ironic, the woman who saved my life was the sister of the man who had stabbed me.
Oh my God.
And she was a Christian woman, they had a large family, and he was a drug addict and was in a lot of trouble. And it's just unreal. I always say God could only write that story.
Yeah,
you know?
that it does sound like a movie script. It does. Now, was
Yeah,
he
it's
ever caught? Was he ever caught and punished for what he did? Did he give a reason if they actually talked to him?
he was caught. I wasn't sure, when you're going through that, who the person was at the time. But when I was in the hospital, of course, I didn't even know my little girl was alive or not.
Right, yeah.
And I couldn't talk because he slit my throat. He cut my vocals. I'm never supposed to talk or sing. I'm just singing all the time for God.
Wow.
But this man, I had tubes, and all running out my neck and stuff. And I couldn't talk. But even before surgery, I wrote on a little piece of paper saying I want to see my little girl. And they brought her in to me. And it just tears, I know she's alive, and that just made me fight even harder to live. And but I picked him out after the police come in, and I picked him out of some mug shots. And of course, then they did arrest him. And actually, I want to say the whole town got together trying to find him.
Wow.
The whole town, the whole community got together, and they even helped me because people had to give out special blood. I have RH blood, just so I could survive even.
Even his sister helped?
Everybody helped. I didn't even know it was his sister till later on.
Oh,
She
okay.
shared with me later who she was.
Okay. Oh.
And she didn't even know, it was just unreal any of that happened. But he was arrested. I had to go to court. He was supposed to have 75 years. Again, a lot more happened because I went through PTSD and screaming and nightmares and paranoia. Somebody touched me, I'd be screaming. And
rightly so, Jenna.
Yeah. And my husband would have to hold me, all night. But more happened, he did go to prison, and God helped me, was helping me through things. And I was, it was difficult. I had to be on a lot of medications to keep me going. I was pregnant, with my baby. And that helped me.
You were lucky the baby survived, right? I mean,
yes, I was very lucky. And they wanted to take my baby, though. They thought, it was on the first part of the pregnancy, and they were afraid that something would be wrong with the child because of everything I had to have, during surgery. But no, I kept that baby. So, but
what did you name her?
Jennifer.
Oh, okay.
My book is Mama Jennifer. The Africans called me after my firstborn child, Mama Jennifer. But he did go to prison, but they let him out after 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah, more happened. My husband was pastoring at the time, and it's easy to find us, Everybody knew where we lived, to call. So when he got out, he called, and he wanted to finish what he started.
Get out of you mean he called and told you that? Or he
called and made threats, and I fell apart. We're human, I'm strong, and God has been there with me all the way. But there's a lot of things I had to learn. And one was forgiveness. This man calling, threatening, and I fell apart again. The police at first, they had me go in the back of the house and learn how to shoot and practice. And
that was their answer?
And that's what they told me. It's a practice and shoot. And they said, and if he comes, shoot him on the outside and pull him in the inside.
Mm-hmm.
But here I was, had to have people watching me. I ended up falling apart. I ended up in a wheelchair, and I just didn't want to live. I didn't want to eat. I just
Hmm.
couldn't continue like it was. And then God started working in my heart, and I realized that I needed to forgive him. They had already put him back in prison.
I would hope so.
Yeah, they put him back for something else that he had done.
Oh,
So he was back in prison, and in my heart, God was working with me, and I knew that I needed to forgive him, not for me, you know,
right.
to
Yeah.
release all that pain and everything I was suffering. And once I released it and forgave him, man, I started living life again. Nobody could pull me down. I was
Mm.
stronger than I ever dreamed I could be.
Now, how long was that recovery for you?
Well, that started immediately after I had forgiven him. So that was probably like 5 or 6 years after all that I had been going through,
Hmm.
that God opened the door for us to go to Africa. So he wanted me to be there, and he was preparing me, that's for sure.
How
But
does
the
one go
man,
about? How does
uh-huh,
that? How do you go about? You just don't pack up and go to Africa. Because I don't know. I mean, are there organizations you could reach out to that would? Okay, all right,
our church. Our
okay.
church is a very small little church. They sent us there first, for a furlough. And then the other churches, they were American Baptist churches. They all came together to support the work that we did over there. But something else that's so important in the story is the forgiveness. I wrote a letter to him in prison, sharing with him about Jesus. Now, I did that, and I told him that I forgave him for what he did and everything. It was 6 months later, I got a letter from him. Do you think I really wanted to open that letter? No.
I wouldn't have, but I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I did. I opened it, and he told me that he was going to meetings, and he was so sorry all that he had done to me, and that he trusted Christ as his Savior.
Hmm,
Is that unreal?
that's amazing. I mean, you're two
Um,
for two in that. You're 2 for 2 in that category now, right? So,
yeah.
that's pretty impressive, and that must make a weight come off of your heart and shoulders, right? I mean,
Yes,
you
yes,
yeah.
it does. It takes everything off my shoulders, and it shows me what love, forgiveness. When you forgive someone, a lot of us, everyone out there, we all go through things in our lives, and it might not be as horrific as what I've had gone through in my life, but whatever you're going through can be seem as bad, but forgiving, you can live life and you can have the love that you need, especially to share Jesus.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, this first half of this story is amazing in itself, and that would probably be 10 lifetimes of a normal person, but you seem to have this special, I don't wanna say special relationship with God, but he seems to be looking out for you
mhm, always,
a little bit more than he does others for some reason.
especially when I went to Africa, we all went in big old duffel bags, army duffel bags. And when we entered the country, they were fighting, election time. But, the kids were holding on to me,
Oh, so
they
you took the kids too?
Oh, yeah. My kids
Oh,
grew up there all their
wow.
life. They grew up in Africa. Our life there was very different. There were I worked with trauma victims. I speak several languages. God blessed me with those gifts. We worked in Sudan, Somalia, Uganda, Kenya. We flew. Um,
Mhm.
we had planes where we could fly to some of the areas that we worked or drove. And some places you have to carry your gas, your food, and your water with you.
Wow.
So I remember times I call him Noah in my book, and I changed a lot of the names, and we'd get out nowhere and he'd take a can and make a part out of it, because he was very gifted in engineering. And, but God blessed us. And my kids grew up us hauling water. We had donkeys, Jack and Jill, that hauled the water. We had lanterns at one time. We lived in different areas, and one point we lived in 2 mud huts, while we built us a permanent place. I say we're like we were pioneers.
Next time I complain that my liquor store doesn't have my favorite wine, I'm going to think of you and
Yeah.
everything that it puts it into perspective. It really does.
And you deal with a lot of things. We went to villages where there was cholera epidemic, and there was no phones back then, no iPhones or anything.
Right.
I had a ham license, but still we didn't know what would be happening when we went there. I've seen a lot of people dead all over the place, people that we've lost out of churches. And then there was a time when I was teaching. The beginning of the book starts with some of the things that I endured over there in Africa. I worked with trauma, and I would have people even, walk for 7 days to come and see me. Mama Jennifer, the white woman who gone through, some of the tragedies, and some of them had gone through stabbing, mutilation, all those things, and they would come see me. This one day, it was so quiet, like how it's just so still when there's a tornado. It was very still. And again, I had a feeling, something wasn't right that day. And I got in my car and I was driving home, and hell broke loose. There were people with machetes. They were killing each other. There were helicopters above. They were supposed to be shooting rubber bullets, but I think that they were real. And then there were people being burned, tires over them to burn them. And I was in the middle of all of it. And, I didn't have time to be scared. Yeah, I just knew that I had to get home. And I just kept praying God to be with me. And they were throwing rocks at the windows of my car. But God brought me through that. I mean, there's so many things where I can see his hand in my life, and it's amazing all that he can do.
So it is. And I have a question then. Why do you think he chose you? I mean, he's not, I'll be honest. I mean, I talk to a lot of people. He seems to be invested in you more than most people. Why do you think that is?
Because he can use me, and because I'm willing, and because I have his heart. He knows that my life, that I'll keep going. I'll stay strong no matter what comes about my way, in front of me. He uses me because he knows I love him. And I have a desire for lost souls. And I don't know what to say. I just have a joy,
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I don't. It's almost, and I'm not trying to make a joke or make light of it. But I'm trying to my audience, give them a correlation. You almost have a divine spidey sense. The superhero Spider-Man.
yeah, I do. Yeah.
He has this thing called a spidey sense that he senses when things are gonna happen. You have a divine one, and that is your superpower.
Yeah, I have a divine one. It's God himself.
Yes.
He's always looked over me. But, it's not always bad. The thing about the book is, turning pain into purpose. It's about having faith. Stepping out on faith, you walk into a lot of things in life, and then resilience and trusting him. But, God always made things better. All the way through the book, there's good things, in a positive way. And he's done a lot. And there's some humor in it because I'm a funny person. I had to walk in my shoes. Poor God had to put up with me up there all the time. So
He's probably up there going, "Oh, it's Jenna. It's Jenna again.
it's
Oh my God."
what's she gonna do today?
Hmm.
But we also there are things like working there's a lot of superstition in Africa. There was one area that I went in the village, and there was this beautiful lake, and all the African women and stuff would walk 7 miles a long ways from that lake. I went to the chief and I said, "Chief, kwa nini wanawake wanataka kutembea mbali sana?" He just looked at me. "Oh, Mama Jennifer, where's kuja hapa?" He said, "All them people, they can't come here." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because long ago, there was a village there and it was very, very wicked. And then the Lord God swallowed them up in the earth and it was a sinkhole. And it became a fire and then became this big lake." And he said, "We never touch that." But what's so amazing is that a lot of people with these superstitions, even working out with remote areas like Turkana or, all these areas, how they leave those superstitions and trust God. It's amazing to see that,
Mm.
So
What are your thoughts on the world today?
Everything in the world today, it's a lot different. Let me give you a perspective like me in Africa and coming back here.
Okay.
A huge difference, I remember coming back, people, more involved in the world, with the worldly things. And when you're out somewhere, you don't have all that. You don't have all that materialistic or, those things that are going on. It's a simple life. But yeah, there in the world, there's a lot of violence, and there's people more involved in things that have gone away from God instead of to God. But one thing I can say by not saying anything negative is that I believe with all my heart that people, if they look to Him, their lives would be so much more different, and the world would be so much more different.
Mm.
And I do believe that I do notice one thing is that the young people are becoming more open, to God more all the time.
I have noticed. I'm 60, so but yes, I have noticed the younger generation seems to be on an uptick with the religion and getting into it. So maybe there's hope for everybody.
Maybe there's hope for all of us. Yeah, for everyone. There's always hope. And it's just trusting and believing in Christ. And it sounds very simple. It's a simple thing, but it's so hard, especially for all of us, some people, because they look to the world,
Yeah.
Look to God, because when you start getting older, even, you realize, hey, and when you have something happen in your life, who's going to help you through it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Strong message, Jen. Now, when did the flight attendants start? Was that after Africa for the military? That's interesting. That's a whole podcast on itself.
It's a whole different story, isn't it? After being there and working with people, and like I said, there's so much in Mama Jennifer, even about Africa. It's just a lot. But when I came back, I did medical first, and I love helping people, of course. And then I started being a flight attendant. My youngest son, he military guy actually, and went to West Point over there. But he said, "Mom, why don't you just be a flight attendant? Because you've traveled the world and you've helped people, And I thought, yeah, that's what I need to do. And the whole door just opened up to me, a whole different world. And I just loved it. I did refugee flights. I volunteered to do Afghanistan flights because I worked with 13 girls, and a lot of them had never even been to third world countries and didn't understand. And I go and help them going toward Ukraine. I've been to the Middle East a lot. My own son was one of them going over to the Middle East on one of our planes, But, it was really, it just opened my heart to see the military, men and women on that flight. They'd be looking at their phones and looking at all their families and tears, because they wouldn't be able to see them. And some of them that went to some of those places never came home.
Right. Yeah.
Young boys, and my son including, he joined at 17. And then he went to, up into West Point. Then he went on in Middle Eastern places. And, they're young boys, but they're giving their life for our country, that love. But they were very open to prayer, and a lot of them had PTSD. I've worked with people with PTSD a lot in my life. And I feel like God used me for them and their lives. And on one of our flights, the refugees, Afghanistan, there's two stories. The Afghanistan people, when they got on the flight, they had big duffel bags, all their families, no shoes, the children, even the adults, some of them. Some said we had to take one car, then get another car, then another car from their remote village area to try to evacuate. And I know what evacuation is too. I've been through that in my life, to evacuate when things happen. And so they were getting there. They hadn't slept in days, haven't eaten. They got on the plane, and the girls, they wouldn't understand because they didn't understand what the toilet was, because they live in a remote area. Like they're just a hole in the ground, you go out to use. If you've traveled remote areas, you would understand. So we had to tell them and share with them how. The language was different, And so God used me to help with that. And then some of them would just lay on the floor on the plane, because they thought, oh, it's okay. I'll just sleep here. No, get up. They wouldn't know all the gadgets were. But it was such a blessing to see, though, when we served them and we gave them lots of meals for them to eat. They were starving. I remember, I bring a hot meal to them, and the tears, they hadn't eaten so long. It reminded me of the street children. I developed schools for street kids in Africa. I had kids from 4-year-olds to 17. I took them off the street. They were sniffing glue, drugs. And I remember the first time I had a meal for them. Of course, they get French beans. You know what French beans are, the green ones, right?
Oh, okay. Green beans, yes.
Green beans. They wouldn't eat those. They say they were grass, and then that goes to animals. But anyway, when they got fed, the food would fall on the floor, and they just pick it up and eat as much as they can. It's the same thing, that hunger, starving. And it just touched my heart to see that we were helping them, and going to the country and not knowing what to expect, but not just them. Like I said, the military too.
Right. Have your children followed in your footsteps at all in wanting to help and humanitarianism and stuff?
Yeah, they're all very, very much in helping. The daughter, she's done stuff like working with children, children that are abused and trying to help them. My youngest son, my boys, to me, they're like little heroes. Over there, my boys were hijacked over there in Africa. One was 15 at the time. The other was, 17, almost 18. And there were gunmen, they would put, the little spikes in the road to stop the vehicle. And there were like 10 of them that came and roughed them up and had some friends with them. They were meeting me. And then a carload with guns came. And my youngest son, they had a gun to his head. And of course, God, they text me. At that time, we had those little iPhones, not little phones,
Mhm.
little phones.
Right. Yeah.
And my oldest son texted and said, Mom hijacked. I just, I just
What are you
started
supposed to
writing.
do with that? I mean,
I just fell. I just thought, oh God, these are my kids, Lord, please, please don't let anything happen to them. Because most people, when they're hijacked in Africa and even in other countries, they don't survive
No.
that.
Right. Yeah.
So here we are in dark Africa and we're out trying to find them. Finally, we found the boys. They were roughed up.
Wow.
And the youngest one, he went through a lot, with all that happened. And I understood, even when you live in the same place where you were hurt, or something happening, you're afraid of all your surroundings. You're afraid of those people coming back or that man coming back to hurt you. But I say they're both like heroes because the youngest one, he got through it with God. And then he tells me one day, Mom, I'm going in the military. And I look at him, no, you're not. He's 17. I have to sign for him, right? I said, no, you're not. And he said, Mom, you're signing for me. I'm going. And I said, why? Because I want to make a difference in this world. He wants to help people. They've seen death. They've seen people starve, but they've seen the good too. They've seen what one person, even his own mom, can do, like taking people off the street and helping them, come to God, change their lives, have a better life, but I signed and I didn't want to because I was so afraid something else is going to happen. And I'm human, I'm mom.
Oh, yeah.
And then the oldest one, he's my hero too. He was there for his brother and he's very supportive of each other. And in his life, yeah, he's a very giving person. The oldest one has a big heart. So I've said a lot, haven't I?
That is why I had you on, Jennifer.
I have too much to talk about, but
No, not too much. Listen, it's amazing. And that's going to bring me to my next question. Has anybody reached out to you about making this a movie?
I've had people talk to me about it, but you get, if you know you understand, a lot of people, you have to be careful about the right people, I love to see it get out there so it can help other people. The book is encouraging. It's an encouragement. And I would love to see it, like on Netflix or some other media that can reach people. And
Yeah.
be done
And I would say Netflix would be a good choice because I think instead of a movie, it would be a series because there is so much to dive into. A 2.5-hour movie wouldn't be able to tell the whole story. You would need episodes. You would need 10 or 12 episodes.
Probably so. Here, let me show you. I'm writing still, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still writing. This is the first book, and it has lots of pictures, It shows all the kids in the different countries and my kids and about traveling, with military. And now I'm with, United Airlines. So.
Wait, so if I fly United, I could possibly be on one of your planes?
Of course. Yeah.
Oh.
I go there very often. I was in DC for a little bit. So, yeah, it gives me opportunity. Again, that's God, because I can travel anywhere in the world and be able to share God and speak and share the story, the message that he has for me. Only God can make that, happen.
Right. So you're done with the Africa trips then, and I'm not saying that like, oh my God, you gave that up. I mean, you've done enough. I'm just saying you're
No,
moved on from that, or you still do that?
no, I would like to go back and do like a documentary of all the places I worked in Africa. And my prayer is to start an NGO. I don't have the funds right now, but I'd like to start an NGO where I can go back and start some clinics in Sudan. I worked there. There's like these mines that from war, the children and the people can go over and they lose arms or legs. And it would be such a blessing to start some clinics, to have legs and arms, made for them. And it would just, there's so much more that I feel God can use me for. And I know the language, I know the people, and my heart's open to that. My heart, Africa. They always will.
You are a special person, Jennifer, really. And just, and I'm going to get the book and I'm going to read it cover to cover. I'm going to tell all my listeners to buy the book too. Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But if you get it on Amazon, if you enjoy the book, please, leave a review. And
Okay.
It would be a real blessing to reach more people.
Yeah. I want to thank you for sitting with me, Jennifer. Really, I have some connections with some movie producers, and I'll do this if you want me to. I don't have to, but I'm just going to lead them to your book. And if they want to reach out to you, if that's okay, I think it's a story that needs to be shown and dramatized to get to a bigger audience.
Yeah, that would be a blessing.
Here's the $2 million question, Jennifer. Who would play you in the movie?
I don't know. Who do you think?
I have to think about that. I thought you would have somebody at the tip of your tongue that you would want to play.
I have no idea. I wore long braids back then. I always wore braids. And actually, if I go back, I'd probably put my braids back on, so I had long hair, younger. So I have no idea.
We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out. And again, Jennifer, thanks for sitting with me. I appreciate it, for giving me your time. I am blown away with your stories. You are a special person, and I'm sure you know that. But I'm telling you from me to you that you're a special person.
Thank you. One thing I always say too, is God is good all the time. And all the time God is good. One of my favorite scriptures is, my strength is made perfect in my weakness. And it is. I love you. You have a blessed day.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Mama Jennifer is a powerful and deeply moving memoir of survival, faith, and hope. It is the true story behind the name Mama Jennifer, a woman whose life was shaped by early trauma, yet transformed through perseverance, courage, and an unshakable trust in God. From a childhood marked by pain and instability, her journey begins with survival. As life unfolded, that journey took devastating turns, including a violent attack while pregnant and surviving a fire and explosion that left lasting physical and emotional scars. Faced with loss, fear, and uncertainty, she was forced to confront the question of whether healing and purpose were still possible. Rather than allowing trauma to define her future, this memoir unfolds as a story of resilience and redemption. Through faith, prayer, and the steady presence of God, healing began. What followed was not just recovery, but transformation. Pain became testimony, and survival became calling. Woven throughout this memoir are themes of resilience, forgiveness, and spiritual renewal. Mama Jennifer is not only a story of survival and suffering, but of finding meaning beyond it. It is a testimony of how God redeems pain and turns brokenness into purpose. Written for survivors, people of faith, and anyone searching for hope after trauma, this memoir offers reassurance that healing is possible and that no story is beyond redemption. Scan the QR code to get your copy on Amazon.